Hello, friends. With the popularity of apocalypse themes in current culture and recent movies, we thought we'd apply this to the science of physics, which is the effort ongoing to reverse engineer the universe. We then could speak of a physics apocalypse, which involves new physics revealed, especially in the work of binary mechanics, and the disaster it represents for the status quo. I looked up the word Armageddon in the dictionary and found that it means the place where the final battle will be fought. That place is Appendix A of physics textbook, which lists so-called fundamental constants, such as light speed, Planck's constant, elementary charge, electron electric and magnetic dipole moments, proton mass, etc. Now, without binary mechanics, these constants are believed to be quote-unquote fundamental, and texts say no theory has ever derived the physical constants from first principles, quote-unquote. Progress at losing physics labs is blocked by blind faith in continuous space-time and failure to update to full quantum mechanics. These constants, with binary mechanics, are the greatest body of unexplained data in physics. With space-time energy quantization, first ever derivation of these constants from first principles at Binary Mechanics Lab won the century-old physics grand championship race. This is where the physics Armageddon final battle is being fought. These fundamental physics constants are sold by obedient physicists as fundamental inputs required by incomplete, flawed physical theories. With multi-millions in research funding, the scientists appear very authoritative. On the other hand, the greatest body of unexplained observations in physics is the so-called fundamental constants. Most important unexplained data in physics is what Appendix A should say. News alert! Binary Mechanics Lab published first ever derivations of basic physical constants from first principles. Many scientists described and measured basic physics constants such as light speed, etc., but only one scientist successfully derived these constants from first principles. Energy space-time quantization is the physics apocalypse ground zero event. Energy space-time quantization yields primary constants for the units of measurement in physics, mass, length, and time. From these primary constants and the binary mechanical model of space, all of these so-called fundamental constants can be derived, which means they're actually secondary physics constants, not primary at all, or fundamental at all. If this ground zero event was not bad enough for the physics cartel, we have a whole list of other binary mechanic lab wins in numerous key areas in reverse engineering the universe. In the scientific merit spectrum, this work at Binary Mechanics Lab rates in the milestone to high level, whereas a lot of the funded research by governments and various agencies, such as the National Science Foundation, we have low or very little scientific merit, even though the budgets might be up to the $1 million or more range with many hundreds of co-authors and collaborators. By the way, BML is entirely privately funded. We don't request funds from any government agency at all, period. So BML has no horse in that race, no axe to grind with regard to government funding. This image shows a worker in the physics research establishment, and typically, he says, I was told at CERN there would be profound new understanding of the universe if we just increased particle collision energy and improved event detection. Now, that was 25 years ago. So what have the particle colliders contributed in that period of time. To justify their existence, there's the Higgs boson discovery. But that's based upon continuous space-time math in the era of full quantization. So in this post-apocalyptic physics community, we have the irony that quantum physicists may refuse to quantize. And when their government-funded projects receive site visitors, such as these guys, they're liable to ask, you lost the greatest race in physics in 100 years, and now you are asking for more research funding? Physicists are challenged to survive a regime change, a transition from the continuous space-time theory epoch to the full quantization era. Why did Humpty Dumpty fall? In physics, what is Humpty Dumpty? He is the continuous space-time theory. Legacy quantum theory and standard model math needed Humpty Dumpty. With space-time and energy quantized, Humpty Dumpty cracked and lost balance. Instead of a powerful cannon, Humpty proved to be a fragile egg, and none of the king's men could put him back together again. The king's men, of course, refers to the elites and mercenaries, in other words, paid workers, in the physics cartel. This, boys and girls, is the backstory on the current regime change in physics as full complete quantum mechanics, known as binary mechanics, replaces partial incomplete quantum mechanics. Our Humpty Dumpty continuous space-time theory requires belief in miracles because it attempts to model all points in space. The continuous space-time theory epoch spans all the way from classical physics up to the standard model. The Golden Age, comprising major advances in physics knowledge for the continuous space-time theory era, is ending. Meanwhile, the Golden Age for full quantum mechanics is just beginning right here. Thus, quantum theory history records a major regime change in physics. Ironically, the amazing faith of high-energy and particle physicists in the miracles of continuous space-time theory has in effect granted BML a de facto monopoly on production of fundamental advances in physics. As an example, general relativity requires belief in miracles. One does not simply postulate an infinite number of infinitely small things in any arbitrary volume without calling it a miracle. General relativity requires an infinitely small inertial motion guidance device at every point in curved space-time, a miracle unacceptable even in theology schools. So Einstein is exonerated. He did his work about 100 years ago, and he did the best he could without knowledge of space-time energy quantization. With the methodological advance of bit function analysis at Binary Mechanics Lab, the 1950s UNIVAC computer is to modern computing as the CERN Atlas detector and the CERN Alice detector are to modern particle physics research. As a result, it appears that the top administrators of some particle physics laboratories may be quietly changing them into museums, theme parks, and tourist attractions while keeping the workers there on the payroll as sort of a welfare program for researchers. With the physics apocalypse and the resulting regime change, banning and censorship is becoming common in the physics community. For example, Binary Mechanics Lab has been banned by YouTube and Reddit physics group. In order to navigate this physics version of political correctness, pretend to be obedient and conduct real research in secret. For example, one can download the Binary Mechanics Lab simulator and do all kinds of research. Report results using an alias or pen name. Use your real name only when not financially dependent on the physics cartel. You notice that back in the 19th century, some of the great physicists, when you see pictures of them, are obviously noblemen, aristocrats. They were financially independent. They weren't the peasants in the village, okay? If you go out and say, I just derived Planck's constant from first principles, the physics cartel may come back and say, gibberish, garbage, I'll ban you, obey me. And of course, that's what happened with Binary Mechanics Lab on YouTube. So it appears that the physics videos on YouTube are mainly focused on the losers in the Grand Championship race in physics. Try to successfully navigate past the repeated mantra in quantum theory that physics is the only science in which physical, logical, and mathematical inconsistencies are normal. It is not. Know how questions are resolved in science. Even in the kangaroo court of the physics cartel, the numbers and math in first ever fundamental constant derivations by BML tell the whole story. Regarding first ever constant derivations, one can rely on the losers if you want, who failed to achieve this. Go ahead and ask them. They're not going to be too happy. Or one can think for oneself and examine the numbers and math. In order to be competitive again in physics, one will need to figure out how to extract that old continuous space-time crap from your intellectual digestive system. In The Wizard of Oz, after the little dog Toto pulled back the curtain on the physics cartel, each physicist then can see what combination of heart, brain, and courage they might need as the physics cartel loses its power over scientists. This edition of our Physics Survival Guide will conclude with some student guidelines. In the movie Race to Witch Mountain, The Rock is driving a young blonde extraterrestrial. And we can imagine, he says, our science is mixed with our religion. We believe in continuous space-time. And the extraterrestrial little girl says, how primitive. Your universities don't require a course in binary mechanics? Here are the best physics programs in the world according to one website. Here are the top 10, and if you scroll down, you'll get the full top 50. Binary mechanics needs to be included in the curriculum of all of these universities. When you're dealing with professors, the student can ask, why not start with the winner, binary mechanics? Here are some of the administrative people, the science undersecretary, the leader at CERN, the director at Fermilab, and the director at NSF. As an example, folks can direct queries to these distinguished individuals, very politely, of course, concerning their analysis of the status of binary mechanics in physics today. Ask them, when will you talk about the winner, binary mechanics? With binary mechanics included in college and university curriculums, physics departments will prepare students for new advances in physics. Student alert. If binary mechanics is not yet in your curriculum, you may increase awareness by posting, it's okay to be winner signs on campus. They did not expect that binary mechanics lab would win. All the polls said the physics cartel was going to win.